Member for Cunningham.
Thank you, Acting Speaker, and I'm pleased to take the opportunity to speak in this cognate debate on the appropriation bills before the House today. Just to give a brief context of the bills and then to go to some specific issues both in my shadow portfolio and my local area. The appropriation bills before us seek to appropriate $2.2 billion in 2015-16 financial year, and they of course reflect the changes that were a result of the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook that was released by the government at the end of last year on the 15th of December. I have to say that what was made clear by the release of my EFO at the end of last year was that despite all of the promises and claims by those opposite, I know there's been a revolving door of personalities in the various positions spruiking their economic credentials. However, the claim was that we would see significant improvements in the budget and the economy under first the Abbott government and then the Turnbull government, and of course first the Hockey treasurership and now the Morrison treasurership, and yet we have not seen that. In fact, quite the opposite is the case. The 2015-16 MyEFO actually told us that the deficit is higher. It's a blowout of $26 billion over the forward estimates and $120 million per day between the 2015-16 actual budget and the 2015-16 MyEFO statement. The net debt for 2016-17 is nearly $100 billion higher than what was forecast in the 2013 PFO, that is the statement of the fiscal situation at the time of the election. Gross debt is headed to $550 billion by the end of the forward estimates, and economic growth has been slashed. So far from being any good news in the MyEFO at the end of last year, we saw a continuation of the failure of this government to actually deliver on the things it promised before the election in terms of either budget responsibility or economic growth. That, of course, is on the back of figures which show that the economy actually has been deteriorating in some very important sectors under this government. Most significantly, living standards, as they're measured by the disposable income per capita, has been falling for 6 consecutive quarters. So the reality for people in each of our electorates across the country, and it's reflected in the sorts of comments you see when you're out and about, as we do at street stalls and door knocking and community functions, people are really feeling under financial pressure. And this government has only been contributing to that. I should also make the point that capital expenditure is falling, and despite what some might think, it's not just in the mining sector. So that there is a significant issue there because, of course, with capital expenditure flows opportunity for jobs growth. And the consumer and business confidence is in fact at levels far lower than they were when this government took office, promising to inject confidence back into the economy. It may well be the most exciting time to be an Australian, but that excitement is obviously based on anxiety and concern, not on optimism and confidence, because we're not seeing that reflected in the data that's coming out on economic performance. Of course, on the back of that, we shouldn't be surprised, because a lot to do with confidence is based around people's messages and signals they get from government, and when you've got the sort of chaos and change and uncertainty that's been going on over just over 2 years now, of course that contributes to a lack of confidence across the broader community and an impact on the economy. And now we've got a Prime Minister who sort of says, oh, I'm just going to float thought bubbles and have conversations and not actually provide some sense of leadership direction to people about where I want to take action to improve the economy. It's not enough to say, oh, I'm all about innovation and excitement. That actually doesn't deliver on outcomes. And so it's probably not surprising that we've seen these sort of results coming in confidence levels as well, because people would be very confused, not only by who makes up the decision-making frontbenchers, as we see more turmoil today, but also what exactly it is they're about. What is their jobs plan? What is their economic plan? What is their taxation plan? Conversations don't deliver, Prime Minister, and so we need to see what exactly you're intending. It would obviously be important to allay some of the fears, because people would be very clearly looking at their direct experience of what the government said before the election and the sorts of promises and commitments they made, and their abject failure to deliver on those. So no wonder that people are very, very confused by this government in all its iterations. Going to the MyEFO statement itself in my own shadow portfolio, it was very concerning to see that we have another economic decision, budget implications that were directly at the heart of cutting funding to the skills sector. I've yet to see a decision made by this government which was actually about injecting and boosting support into the skills sector. Over 2 years, they've cut $2 billion out of the skills budget. The previous member spoke about the importance of giving young people in his area an opportunity to get training and apprenticeships. Well, it again takes more than talk and optimism. You actually have to invest, and we've seen exactly the opposite. Through the MyEFO, we saw a further cut in this sector of $400 million, taking it to nearly $2.5 billion since this government was elected. We, in particular, have seen a cut of $273.8 million over 4 years from the Industry Skills Fund. Now, in government, Labor had a National Workforce Development Fund that was directly targeted at supporting upskilling existing workers so that not only their own skills but the capacity of their business that they worked for to innovate and adapt to the demands of the future. And it funded really important programs, in particular combining literacy and numeracy skills in with vocationally related skills for their workplace. And we've only just very recently seen the Australian Industry Group again come out and say that there are major issues with the literacy and numeracy skill levels of many, many workers. Well, this government, when they came into office in their first budget, abolished that program, and they claimed that their new version, the Industry Skills Fund, which had significantly less money, would actually be delivering on upskilling existing workers. Well, we haven't seen it well subscribed to, and then in MyEFO at the end of last year we saw a further cut to that program. Additionally, which is shocking given how peak bodies like the Australian Industry Group have been talking about the need for literacy and numeracy amongst the adult population, the workforce population, they also cut $122.9 million from the Skills for Education and Employment program, the program that directly provided funding for literacy and numeracy, again cut in the MyEFO. The result of all of this is, of course, an enormous impact on the skills sector. And we've seen that, as I said, because we've got reports coming out only in the last month about some key issues around skills problems and the needs for investment from the industry sectors themselves. But I particularly want to highlight today the $1 billion in cuts that were made to funding programs for apprenticeships. The result, and I've highlighted this to the House before, was that completions dropped from 63,000 in June 2013 to just 29,700 in June last year. And it's shocking, more than halving of the number of apprentices completing their training directly under this government's watch. There were, in fact, almost 100,000 less apprentices in training. That number had dropped from 407,000 in June 2013 to 308,000 in June 2015. So a significant number of programs that Labor had put in place, because we are committed to trades training and to apprentices, and remembering that apprenticeships cover a wide variety of really important skills that are in demand in the economy. The programs that we put in place were designed specifically at commencement, so there were programs there such as access programs to enable young people who may not have quite got their skills up to the point to be competitive to get an apprenticeship, to actually get the support in the program that they needed, get their skills up to that level, and then get the opportunity to access an apprenticeship. And there were some fantastic programs being run across the country by people such as the Motor Traders Association, who were doing exactly that in very disadvantaged communities, and this government just abolished that. There were also programs designed to support apprentices throughout their apprenticeship so that they were improving their opportunity and their capacity to succeed and complete their apprenticeship, things such as apprentice mentoring, and they abolished those as well. And of course, very significantly, there was a program recognising that apprentices are on training wages, and so sometimes it's a real financial struggle for them. We had a payment system called the Tools for Your Trade program, which provided progress payments to apprentices, both as an encouragement to stick with the apprenticeship and complete it, but also to recognise some of the pressures financially on them. And I would draw the House's attention to the significant number of people now who do apprenticeships as mature age people, because they're actually looking either to upgrade their skills or they're looking to transfer into a new job. And it's tough if you're doing that on an apprentice wage, and so we had that program in place. This government abolished the Tools for Your Trade program and offered a loan in the form of a HEX-type loan called trade support loans to apprentices, and that has been massively undersubscribed, because the last thing an apprentice worrying about their financial situation actually wants to do is to take out a loan, particularly when, having completed their apprenticeship, many of them go on to set up their own small business and may be looking for financial assistance to do that anyway, so they don't want to start with a loan on their back at the beginning of that process. And so we saw that cut as well. Joint group training programs, which were really significant in terms of providing support through group training associations to small employers who might not be able to carry an apprentice themselves, to actually be supported through that organisation to take on an apprenticeship. That was abolished. I'm very pleased to see that some of my state colleagues, such as in Victoria, are reinvesting in that sort of activity, because it was very, very short-sighted. And of course, in all of this, we hear no mention from the government about our fantastic public TAFE system. It is the backbone of our training sector. It provides the benchmark and the ballast to the system, and when you see what a crisis the vocational education sector has been in and continues to be in, with only today more media reports about major private training providers collapsing, there has been the only indication from this government of any interest in the public provider has been their decision to put out a discussion paper to the states proposing an entire federal takeover of the system, complete deregulation of pricing. In effect, it exactly is a privatisation of the public TAFE system, and no wonder the minister ran very quickly from that when that document was exposed by Fairfax Media, because regional and rural members in this place would know very well how valued TAFE is in their communities, how important it is to the opportunities for all of their people to get training, and to actually see it put under direct threat by the proposition being progressed by the federal government would cause enormous concern across the country. And so we now see, again, through my EFO and the bills before us, the continued story of a failure to invest by this government in the skills sector, a failure to deliver on apprenticeships, and a failure to take seriously the real challenges about innovation and transformation in our economy, and the need to invest in skills, in training, in education to deliver on that. And I would particularly point out to the Prime Minister in my closing statements and acknowledge the Minister for Trade coming to the table, that if you want innovation, you really have to understand that it's also about our trades and skills sectors, and you have to stop cutting them to the bone.